Greetings and welcome to the United States Transhumanist Party Virtual Enlightenment Salon. My name is Gennady Stolyarov II, and I am the chairman of the U.S. Transhumanist Party. Here we hold conversations with some of the world's leading thinkers in longevity, science, technology, philosophy, and politics. Like the philosophers of the Age of Enlightenment, we aim to connect every field of human endeavor and arrive at new insights to achieve longer lives, greater rationality, and the progress of our civilization. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our U.S. Transhumanist Party Virtual Enlightenment Salon of August 27th, 2023. I'm pleased to be with you here today, along with our distinguished panel of U.S. Transhumanist Party officers and advisors. We have joining us today Dr. Bill Andrews, founder and CEO of Sierra Sciences. We have our 2024 U.S. presidential candidate, Tom Ross. He is also our director of Sentient Rights Advocacy. We have our 2024 vice presidential candidate, Daniel Tweed. He is also our director of Citizen and Community Science. We have our director of publication, Zach Richardson. We have our director of visual art, Art Ramon Garcia. We have our current vice chairman and legislative director, Jason Geringer. We have our director of longevity outreach, Ben Ballweg. And we are likely to be joined by other USTP officers as this salon progresses. But the reason why we have gathered such a distinguished panel today is to discuss the subject of longevity and the different perspectives that our most active USTP members and officers have to offer regarding it. Now, longevity is one of the most important goals of the U.S. Transhumanist Party. The first core ideal of the USTP states that the U.S. Transhumanist Party supports significant life extension achieved through the progress of science and technology. When we look at transhumanism more generally and how transhumanism is described, transhumanism is, of course, all about making life better through the progress of science and technology. And the ways in which life can be made better through science and technology are manyfold. So longevity is one important component of transhumanism, but there are other important components as well. Transhumanism is often characterized as consisting of the three supers: super longevity, super intelligence, and super happiness. And today we will be focusing on super longevity, but I wanted to acknowledge the great work that is being done by the Tom Ross campaign in addressing the super intelligence strain, particularly in this day and age where there's a lot of fearful rhetoric regarding AI and recent advances in generative AI models. And it's absolutely essential to have a countervailing message to that, a message of hope rather than fear, a message about how AI can empower us as humans and enable us to discover our humanity. And I think a lot of the messaging that Daniel has been focusing on as part of his contribution to the campaign has been in terms of the super happiness strain, how science, including community science initiatives, can raise people's quality of life and hopefully enable a future of super longevity and super abundance to be more enjoyable, more meaningful, more fulfilling to people. So we all complement one another within the Transhumanist Party, and I hope this will clearly show in the discussions that are undertaken today. Right now, I would like to invite Dr. Bill Andrews to provide the opening remarks regarding his views on longevity and how he became interested in the subject. He is, of course, one of the world's leading telomere biologists, and he has quite a story to share with all of us. So, Bill, please proceed.
Well, let me first qualify that. I consider myself an expert in the subject of aging, and my detour lately has just been in the field of telomeres, just because I think that's going to be a critical thing to to focus on. But I definitely think there's a lot more to do after telomere biology is figured out in order to cure the aging process. But I want to say that one of the reasons why it's very important to the Transhumanist Party to figure out a way to, I call it cure aging, but extend longevity or whatever. But one of the reasons why it's important to cure aging is so that we can all benefit from all the other things that the transhumanist movement is going to do for us. And that's part of one of the main reasons I think it's important to cure aging is because, a lot of us, we enjoy watching science fiction movies about the future and stuff like that. And it's like, we want to be there. We don't want to miss out on all that stuff. And so those are the kind of personal kind of reason. Well, one other personal one is it's like I ran a race this morning, and it really bothers me that people half my age beat me by 10 minutes. Okay, it's and I won't name names, but it's something I would love to be running as fast as I did when I was half the age I am now, and competing in other sports. But one of the key things is that a lot of people are on very big missions to do really great things for the world. Okay, and they spend their entire life figuring out, solving problems, etc. And then they get to advanced age, and they're still learning, and they're still putting all the pieces together, and they die. Okay, I typically use an example of David Attenborough when I talk about this kind of stuff. David Attenborough is 97 now. He recently did a documentary called A Life on This Planet, and he talked all about all the importance of the environment and the way we're treating animals, and the importance of all the life on this planet and how we have to protect it. And I was just blown away with the intelligence of this guy and all the thought that he's put into it and all the things he discussed that nobody else ever thinks about. And then if he passes away, nobody's going to carry the ball and follow through. And this is a problem with, we're doomed to repeat history, okay, the bad things of history, with losing a lot of the really powerful minds that have existed that had so much to contribute. And it's not just the intelligent minds, it's also the other people that brought great joy to the world, like Betty White. Losing Betty White was a very tragic thing. She'll never be replaced. And this is another reason why curing aging has to be done. But bottom line is, aging sucks. And, most people don't know it because most people don't go to visit hospices and assisted living homes and talk to the people. I've done a significant amount of that in my past. And people tend to, when they start actually getting to the age when they can't take care of themselves anymore, they don't share. They don't get on the news and tell people how awful aging is. But it's a terrible thing. Now, at the other side of the coin, there's a lot of people that say that curing aging will suck, okay? Because it's going to bring a lot of problems to the world. And I've written a book where I list them all, and there are significant issues that are going to raise by curing aging. But the bottom line there, I've probably used the word bottom line about 10 times now, is that let's say we did cure aging, and in 200 years from now, there is no aging, and we have all the problems that everybody predicted we would have. If there was suddenly a vote, an election or whatever, to decide should we ban the cure for aging, it would never win. People are going to think, even though we have the problems we do at that time, the problems in 200 years from now are not going to be anywhere near as bad as the problems we have now. And I do believe that humans, can learn to adjust to whatever they're faced with, okay? And my favorite example is the introduction of the World Wide Web back in late 70s, early 80s, or whenever that was. People were just blown away. They thought this could never happen. This is too complicated. Nobody will ever be able to deal with it. And now we can't live without it. Okay, so I do believe humans can adjust, and we can figure out solutions to all the problems, because there's so many problems with curing aging. I don't even want to list them here. But the biggest one, I think, is how would the young ever get jobs if the old never retire? That's going to be a big, big problem. But so those are the things that I have to say about why it's important that the transhumanist party and transhumanist movement focus on longevity so that we can actually deal with all the other issues that come along in the future. Now, I think you also wanted me to talk about how I got interested in this, but pretty much everything I just said has always been an interest of mine. My father was very interested in seeing a cure for aging. He used to think about all these things. He was very upset about the fact that he was going to miss out on the future and stuff like that. So he put the seed in my head when I was actually 10 years old. I'll never forget the day when he came to me and said, since you're so interested in science and medicine, you should, when you grow up, become a doctor and find a cure for aging. And that's been an obsession of mine ever since. And every day, practically, I hear about somebody dying that I think is a terrible loss. And it's like, it's wrong. And it's just something that we have to solve. And I know, because my PhD is in mostly evolution. Okay, so population genetics, evolution. It's also in molecular genetics. But what I've learned, 45 years ago when I was getting my PhD and ever since then, is that, aging is something that we evolved, and there's important reasons for it. For survival of the species, is to help with increasing the variety within our species to allow us to survive rapidly changing environments. And but even if it didn't offer solutions to our survival of our species, there is no reason, so mutations occur randomly, okay? And some are sustainable and some aren't. But if a mutation occurs that eliminates the longer lived, and by longer lived, I mean anybody who has already raised their young, okay? If a mutation occurs, it eliminates the longer lived, and there's a bunch of them, heart disease, cancer, you name it. Okay, there's a whole bunch of different ways to eliminate the longer lived, that preferentially eliminate the longer lived over the shorter lived. When a mutation like that occurs, there's absolutely nothing to prevent it from existing. Because once you have already shuffled your genes and created an offspring, you do not contribute to the survival of the species anymore. And so there's no reason for these things that eliminate the longer lived to ever disappear. And literally, we have thousands of different ways to eliminate the longer lived in our species now. And so the Transhumanist Party has got a big task ahead of it to figure out solutions to all of them. I like to think of them as sticks of dynamite that are burning, and some have shorter fuses than others. But and we've put out a lot of the short fuses, but we have a lot of fuses yet to put out. But I've been obsessed with this, and I consider one of the shortest fuses that we have now is telomeres, and that's why presently my focus is on telomere biology. But I believe there's a lot of other sticks of dynamite that have to be put out. Telomeres is just, we'll never cure aging if we don't put out the stick of dynamite that is causing telomere shortening. So I think I've said it all. It's just been an obsession my whole life. I've all through schools, high school, college, graduate school, I've been trying to gain all the information that I can to work on curing aging, and it involves math, statistics, statistical theory, logic, probability, molecular biology, a lot of different things to put everything together, to all the twos and twos, or put all the pieces of the puzzle together to figure out what's going on. And I'm a long way from getting there, and I depend a lot on my colleagues like Aubrey de Grey and Liz Parrish and Greg Fay and Mike West, and people that are equally as motivated as I am to find cures for aging. And I think it's going to take a team. I think it's not going to happen with just one person. It's going to take all of us working together to get it. But it's under the umbrella of the Transhumanist Party, or the Transhumanist Movement. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much, Bill. I think that was an excellent overview, and we really appreciate the work that you have been doing, the many decades of work that you have invested into getting humankind even to this stage where we have a fighting chance to overcome biological aging during our lifetimes. By the way, congratulations on your finish at the race earlier today. All I will say is that I was there as well, and it was great to be able to run it. And wouldn't it be great to be able to run these races at 100 or 200? I think that is a future to aspire toward.
You were the person half my age that beat by 10 minutes that I was referring to.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. All right. So now let us go to Daniel Tweed for his perspectives on longevity. And I understand, Daniel, that longevity was a personal interest of yours for quite some time.
Yeah, I actually got to meet one of the founders of Alcor back in the 70s when I was going to the local L5 chapter meetings, which is the space migration. And I'm kind of sorry you didn't say intelligence, increased life extension, space migration, because that indeed, the SMILE formula was Timothy Leary's vision for the transhumanist future, and that without the space migration, the intelligence increase and the life extension become these kind of horrid dead ends of people fighting over planetary scraps. And I was pretty involved early on with the libertarian movement through most of the 1980s, and an early subscriber to the Combuzine claustrophobia, which actually bundled together kind of the SMILE curricula. They had the Commercial Space Report, they had the L5 News, they had Marilyn Ferguson's Brain Mind Bulletin in there. So it was really a great way to subscribe to all these different periodicals, and they would just bind them all together, and you get them delivered at a fraction of the price it would cost to subscribe to them individually. So I'm in a way. My candidacy with transhumanist ideas is kind of a reparations or apology tour for the baby boomers, because, my generation, born in 1960, I might be borderline Gen X, but, the baby boomers did a lot of stuff that was right. They kind of invented the internet and made science fiction popular, but they did a lot of stuff wrong too. They were incredibly self-indulgent and, didn't set good role models a lot of the time. But I think we have a chance to expand that Overton window with the ideas in the Transhumanist Party platform. It is the party that matches, my ideas better than any other party. Maybe the Pirate Party would be in the running, or some other minor parties. But we're all a collection of individuals with transhumanist friendly ideas, so we don't always cleave 100% to the platform of the Transhumanist Party, and that's as it should be. I think our platform document is a living document, and we use ranked choice voting and innovative consensus kinds of techniques to improve it. It's a continuous improvement procedure, much as evolution is. And evolution has been this 4 billion year biological slog of torture and suffering and random mutation and things going extinct. So it's kind of neat to be alive at a time when we can take control of some of these levers of evolution and maybe improve on them, or maybe not. I mean, we don't have the ability yet to reproduce a closed cycle ecosystem. So if you extend the lifespan of one part of the ecology, you have to do that while being cognizant of the ripple effects throughout the ecosystem. So I'm putting in a whole system of systems approach with my various candidacies. I'm running again as a local city council candidate for the 4th time next year in Thousand Oaks, Ventura County, California here. And I'm really glad to have the community science directorship because I think we have had a terrible hit to scientific fact-based thinking in the recent years. So anything that can be done to kind of put that back into the Overton window, as well as, this idea of we are part of a larger system. For instance, of the 100 trillion or so cells that you call yourself, 90% of them do not have human DNA. We are an individual ecosystem walking around, and Bill can probably fact check me on that if I got that wrong, but he's giving me a thumbs up. So, and in the same way, we have this boundary that reaches out to the entire biosphere. So I hope we will be cognizant as we embark on transhumanist projects of these realities. And that'll be my opening statement.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Daniel, for that opening statement. And we have a bit of feedback from our chat as well. Our Director of Energy Issues, John Carrots, writes that, yes, space exploration and migration are good areas to pursue if we are all living longer. Indeed, this is the only way that we could actually explore more than our own solar system, because to travel to any other star systems would take many hundreds of years at the very least, even if we get to near light speed. And then OSH Radio, which is John Carrots, also says that he never got to work with Timothy Leary, but he got to meet and be with Ram Dass, who had worked with Leary. So there's another essentially connection to a well-known person who was interested in life extension. Unfortunately, Timothy Leary died in 1996 at the age of 76, but I think he did a good job in promoting the cause of longevity. And Tom, you had interacted with Tim Leary as well. So I'd be interested in hearing some of your story, some of your background, and your thoughts on the subject of longevity, some of its implications, some of the perhaps auxiliary issues that you think would need to be worked out.
Yeah, I did work with Tim in the 90s while I was working with Marilyn Ferguson at the Brain Mind Bulletin. A little name dropping there. But yeah, I helped him get some Japanese trademark forms together, and I did that. And a year later, I met him in person at John Lilly's famous Malibu birthday party. And he was as sharp as ever. He thanked me for helping him get this form. He knew the number of the form. He was just very sharp up until the end. And I actually started my first campaign ad was "Why not?" Timothy Leary, and I put the date of his birth because those were his last words. And so anyway, yeah, I think what the impetus of this whole salon and what I'll be dedicating the Tuesday show on WTEF to is that the people on X, the platform formerly known as Twitter, were suggesting that me and Dan aren't enthusiastic enough about longevity. And then they referred to a part of the town hall where we both spoke. And he said, the person said my comments were even worse than Dan's, and because what I said was, I don't necessarily want to live forever. And that's not what brought me into this transhumanist movement. I was brought into it because of my fight against child exploitation. And, I tell the story a lot about how I had a 6-hour road trip where I was able to download and read and listen to the Constitution and Bill of Rights and that kind of thing. And that's what brought me into this. So I'm not, and I think that, and when I said, well, I think we should have controls on it, or we should have voluntary population controls, obviously voluntary, that we should consider all of these aspects. And I'm looking forward to looking at Bill's book and the list that he has of the issues that will come up. But I think we need to be working on those now. I think we need to be working on all the ramifications, not wait until they come up before we address them. So that's really my whole point of view, is that we need to discuss issues like the population dynamics, healthcare and medical infrastructure, economic sustainability, resource management. All of these things need to be taken into account now, because the longer we're here, the more damage we do to the planet and the more waste we produce. And there's an analogy of that the older generation have in a public pool, and they have a certain time where they're allowed to be in this pool. But they decide they want to stay around longer. And so the younger generation can't get into the pool yet. And so we need to work out these things now, because there will be a lot of issues that will come up. And I do think we need to, while we're trying to kill death, we need to deal with these issues now. Otherwise, if we wait, we'll just be burning that bridge when we get to it. And so that's really, and I've posted a couple of times over the last couple of years about this idea of voluntary population control, or, what can we do to prepare for living longer? And my friends list, it drops dramatically after I make these posts, or I get very vitriolic kind of comments on these posts. And it's because I'm tapping into what most people fear, which is death. And so in a lot of ways, I just see this as like when our survival instinct of wanting to stay alive is in play, all hell breaks loose, or we don't even consider what we're doing to the biosphere or to animals or anything, because we want to stay alive. Most people want to stay alive. But again, we also have an increased rate of suicide in America. These people don't want radical life extension. They want radical life subtraction. And so we need to deal. And if people start living longer and all of these issues aren't taken care of ahead of time, like what's retirement age, how will entitlement issues, economic issues, and institutions be affected by this? That rate may increase, because a lot of people can't deal with life as it is right now. And I often say, I jokingly say that, I can't afford to live longer, but there's a real tragedy in that comedy, in that because the reality is, if we don't deal with how we will deal with the health industry, how we will deal with retirement, all of these things, that's a serious concern. At present level, I think I can afford to live to 72 unless I get something else going. And so I joke about how, I can't really afford to live, another 20 years. There's ways to do that. But I think in that comment there's a very serious issue that a lot of people need to be aware of. And we need to, while we're trying to kill death, we should be working on these issues at a fever pitch, and so I think, it reminds me of back in 2015, when there were so many groups and individuals calling for immediate disclosure of UAP, and they wanted the government to share everything right away. But these groups and these individuals were not even considering the panic that the American public might experience with immediate disclosure that this is real. And so that's why I started the US6 series, which is designed to help people, to get emotional first responders into different communities, to work with psychotherapists and PTSD experts to give us real-time panic mitigation methods, this type of thing. And so when you're talking about radical life extension, without considering all of the other aspects that go into this, then that's kind of the same thing. A lot of there may be an increase in suicide rate. There may be a, younger generation won't be able to get jobs, as Bill said. So we got a lot to decide on, before we really kill death. And so that's really where I come to it as. And I think and that freaks a lot of people out. Wait, what do you mean? We need to live longer right now. And but again, I come at it very rationally. I think we need to handle all of these societal and ecological and economic institutions now. We need to figure that out as we're working on this. And but when you're trying to be rational about this topic, you become a threat. And that's what I've experienced. Again, my comments will be vitriolic. My friends list will be culled immediately if I talk about voluntary population control. And a lot of people say, no, we'll figure it out. We can keep growing and the population keep growing. We'll figure it out. But then at what cost? We're already killing off 100 species per day with our ravenous appetite for resources. And so we just need to take a step back, and even if some of us don't live long enough to live long enough, we need to prepare a path for those who can, So that's really where I'm coming at it with.
Yes, thank you, Tom, for those comments. And I think if I understand your position correctly, you're not against the pursuit of longevity, and you're not even against the pursuit of longevity now, but you want to simultaneously consider all of the ramifications and address the challenges that may arise so that if and when radical increases in lifespan are attained, we already have answers to those challenges. We already have ways to counter the critics.
Absolutely. We want to live in a world that, if we're going to live longer, we want to live in a world where that living longer is a good thing, you know? Otherwise, we will see younger generations not working. All these aspects will come into play. And that's why I think we need to work on all of this ad nauseum and parallel.
Yes, and I think one of the main purposes of a venue like this is to discuss these kinds of questions and discuss these implications so that we have answers and we can identify which of these concerns are more salient, which are less salient, which of these issues might resolve themselves, which of these issues would require some sort of policy intervention in order to resolve them. And the question of jobs is an interesting one. So our friend Luis Arroyo in the chat states that longevity with a jobs guarantee might be great, but another possibility could be maybe jobs themselves, at least in their current form, would be made obsolete, and some combination of a universal basic income with a focus on creative human output, how we use that spare time that is gained and that lengthened lifespan would be the way to go. So that's one discussion that we could have. Our viewer Sophia's Roulette writes, agreed, planning ahead is best. So I think another question would be essentially what kind of activism and what kind of planning would be important in this regard. So Aubrey de Grey has stated that he believes that an inflection point in public attitudes will occur within a few years, essentially. And this will be ahead of the arrival of interventions to bring aging under medical control. So in those situations, if, for instance, people like Oprah Winfrey become interested in super longevity and start to discuss it on their talk shows, then all of a sudden millions of people will be clamoring for it. And then the public discussion will necessarily go toward addressing these kinds of implications. And I think we have seen a bit of a preview of that in terms of the discussions on AI, because the technology for generative AI arrived sooner than many people were expecting, but the public discourse hadn't caught up to what I think, and I think, Tom, you would consider as well to be a more rational approach. Instead, the discourse has been laced with fear, laced with essentially apprehension about what AI would do to jobs, what AI would do in terms of discrimination and existential risks surrounding AI. So it would have been nicer to kind of prepare the groundwork for a more constructive narrative on AI, even though I don't think any of us would have wanted to stop the progress in generative AI. So I see a lot of parallels there, and at least in terms of the Transhumanist Party and what we will be discussing, we definitely want to be part of setting that groundwork as quickly as possible. And these salons are a great way to do it. And our other policy conversations, as well as your campaign, Tom, would be great venues and great means toward achieving that. So with that being said, I would like to ask Zach Richardson to provide his perspective, because Zach has had a lot of involvement both in terms of the pursuit of longevity as well as the pursuit of self-improvement through a variety of health diagnostics. And indeed, in an important way, the state of advancement of contemporary medicine has saved Zach's life and has made it possible for him to be with us today. So while Zach is not a super centenarian, he is alive today because of advances in medical care. So Zach, please go ahead.
Yeah. So briefly, for anyone that doesn't know my story, had some weird half genetic, half virus thing that hit my heart. Had to have something called a left ventricular assist device in me for about 4 years. Edward Hudgens made a comment about sick care a minute ago, and that it kind of goes into that. I was healthy while I had it. It was a mechanical device that came a cord out of my chest. I'd wear a backpack that had 2 batteries in it, kept my heart going. But it was because I was healthy that I couldn't get a new heart. It was finally, I ended up getting some kind of other infection on it. And then it was only because I was getting weaker and weaker that they finally said, okay, well, now we'll give him a new heart. So part of that does go into the politics thing for me, as someone that believes that the organs of a person are something that should be very much their possession. And frankly, I think they should be able to be sold after you're dead rather than just have to be donated. I see no reason you wouldn't be able to have your own organs and do that. But as regards to the diagnostics, I think that's where the transhumanist aspect really comes in. I mean, I've lived as a cyborg. I've had this machine inside me for 4 years. I decided to sort of continue the tradition afterward, but outside my body rather than inside. I've got a little device here. Some of our friends, longevity, may be familiar with. It's called an Aura Ring version 3. It's got a few sensors on the inside, green LED, red LED. It measures your heart rate, heart rate variability, body temperature, your blood oxygen. It's really freaking cool. You get an app on your phone, and it shows you your readiness score each morning that shows you basically how you've recovered from your workouts the past day. Now, as someone that is not a cardio bunny like Gennady and Bill, and someone that likes to lift weights a little bit more, it doesn't have quite as good of diagnostics when it comes to that. It doesn't really register my workout. So that's pushing me to start running a little bit more myself. But looking at these each morning, I noticed something with the biofeedback, which is just that not just because it was there, but because I was looking at it actively, the biofeedback really started. It kind of clicked with me that biofeedback happens as a feedback loop, like it happens with me. I don't care about it until I see these numbers and go, oh shit, I had a couple drinks last night, and now all of a sudden my recovery score tanked. Wow, that's affected me way more than I thought. Or, oh wow, I had a cup of coffee at 3 p.m. My sleep score just got destroyed, and I felt like I slept okay, but I noticed I woke up in the morning, didn't feel so great, felt poor. So that's one device. If it would be possible, I'd like to share my screen and show the dashboard real quick. It's something they're still working on a little bit, but
yes. So Zach,
I think it's going to have.
You can create an instance of your screen if you click on the present option on the bottom toolbar, and then I can enable you to share the screen once you do that.
Okay.
And Bill is wondering, is the Ring better than the wrist devices that do the same thing? Yes. So I'm going to enable screen sharing for you. And
yes, I've actually got a wrist device here too. So yeah. Can you guys see?
Yes.
Okay. So this is the dashboard. It looks a little bit different than what they've got on the app. I was real pleased to see that they're working on making development tools a lot more available for people. So this is something where I can go by my days and I can see my resting heart rate, which is something I'm trying to get lower. That's a day it wasn't charged. Decrease over time, or sometimes increase. Your total sleep's in the middle there. I've been getting a little bit less than I should. That's something I'm trying to work on, but it's tricky with my schedule. The activity burn, this one's a little bit inaccurate, and that has to do with the fact that I like strength training. It's what I do more. I do it, so I do it. I will do it, so I do it. I'm willing. Here is where the readiness score comes in. So there are different bars here that are shown. I believe because my vagus nerve is cut, it's always going to show me at like the very worst HRV score, because I really don't have the ability to alter my heart rate at the same rate other people do. For example, it takes me probably like at least 25 minutes to warm up if I'm trying to do some sort of cardio, because there's a chemical process that has to happen in my body to tell my heart rate to increase, rather than someone normally where their vagus nerve can just kind of send a signal down and make their heart work a little bit more quickly. I still do notice if I meditate and if I get a lot of sleep, my heart rate variability can go up a little bit. And it's they say your vagus nerve can grow back. It'll take several years. It's only been 1 year for me. But this is a little bit of what we're looking at just on a day-to-day basis for your dashboard here. Cool thing is you can start seeing trends over time. A separate section that will show. This is kind of funny. This is actually, I lost my ring at this point here, and I liked it so much I ended up getting another one. But one thing you can do with your days that I'm trying to get a little better or more scientific about is you can tag different days, and they have preset tags. You unfortunately can't make your own. But I'll start noticing things like if I use a foam roller one day, I'll end up a little bit less sore, sleep a little bit better. It works. Meditation, the anxiety goes a little bit down. I sleep better. Days that I have anxiety, good days for mindfulness practice, things to know. You shorten some of this window here and see different spots with how it works. Like any tag, for example, days I had like massage or medication, and have some pop-up that would jump onto the screen and show me what I'm looking at entirely for which days, and what stats would come up for my readiness score for those days. So I'm hoping this developer team is something that they're working on that a little bit. So that's Aura. So Tom's campaign is a little bit open source, is one way he put it to me. And he has some of his initiatives. He mentioned to me it might be okay if I made like an open source initiative of my own. He said people were sort of welcome to make their own initiatives. And I've got some positive feedback about one that I had that would have sort of a Office of Health Innovation pop up that would be able to take public-private partnerships and be able to build them together for infrastructure that already exists for fantastic biofeedback tools like this that are doing more than just about anything else to change my behavior, as compared to, just being told or have some general idea that being healthy is good. Actually getting that feedback is what has changed my behavior. I think it would have similar effects on other people. So looking at some of these things with my biomarkers on Inside Tracker, I just updated a whole bunch of these this morning. They're still loading because they came from a PDF, so they're not all uploaded. My most recent data is unfortunately from last October. This is another one that I'm sort of a power user of Inside Tracker, and that I upload probably 4 to 5 times as many blood tests as the average person, simply because with my condition, I have to get some tests. You'll hear the CBC, which is something blood cell count, and then the CMP, which is the comprehensive metabolic panel. Most people might get those done like once a year, if at all, or once every 6 months. I end up getting one done pretty much every month. But like back then I noticed I had some really high glucose, so they ended up putting me on metformin. You get sort of a graph that shows these over time. Neatly, it gives you a little bit of an example of like what the negative consequences are for when you're high or when you're out of range. A lot of these were when I was a little bit sicker. I'm hoping some of these look better once everything's back up. I know my albumin looked good because this is one I got a lot of protein in. Or I always try and get enough protein in. So seeing these kind of bounce up and down over time is really cool. And I'm really hoping that Inside Tracker would be able to take, say, this chart and expand it and be able to integrate some things from Aura with like, oh, okay, the night before or the few days before I was fasting. So that's why my glucose was so low. Now, obviously, there are even better tools for controlling glucose, such as a continuous glucose monitor. That technology still needs some work too. I had one, and some of the times it was saying I was really low. I'd do a stick test with my finger, and it'd be way off. So I'm a little hesitant to invest in any sort of a device like that until they get a little more. The real thing that I wanted to show you guys that I thought was the coolest was that I got my genome sequenced. Okay, so this is sequencing.com. Now, you guys may have heard of 23andMe or Ancestry.com, and those are kind of like the kids in the kiddie pool compared to sequencing. It's more expensive, but they sequence way more of your DNA. So opening up Genome Explorer, which is one of their free apps, you can pop for certain conditions in here. Now, I know some of my parents have arthritis, and I've scanned this a little bit myself. So you can search for arthritis on this, and you get a bit of a chart that pops up here, okay? So it'll show, I'm not familiar with all of this yet. The name of the gene will be along here. Some of these are unfamiliar to you guys if you have any knowledge of like, or have been in longevity circles for a while, like IL-6. This one popped out right to me. But what you can do with these is you can open these clinical variants here, and it shows the variant ID. It pops open an NCBI webpage that shows the link to ClinVar here, which is just clinical variants or something. But once you pop open, what this one was saying was that normally it's like a CC, but alternatively it can be a T. So there's like the cytosine and the thymine. And then for mine here, it was a CT. So popping that up where it would say that here, where C goes to T instead, the main button you want to look at here is the clinical significance one on NCBI. And that will show you, what do you know, rheumatoid arthritis cleansation. Now, of course, that's not a doom sentence. And of course, it would be nice if you could access the actual risk variants and your current status and the condition and the classification. But this one is hunt to us unless you are an elite hacker like I am, and go style sheet up this sucker here and just delete it from the web page, or are unable to. There is a quick workaround to delete the style sheet, and you can see a lot of these for the variants here. I do have some possible risk associations. Some of them are harmless. Some of them here, like we'll notice with our IL-6 cysteine and stuff, that one looks a little bit nasty too. I guess the last thing I'll say is with the impact, this looks like kind of a random string of letters, but what it has to do is it shows what the protein would have been and what it is instead, and at what position on the gene it is. So here, like instead of I think a valine, it's an alanine, or here instead of a glycine, it's an alanine. These ones have to do with leucine. Here's methionine to valine. I'm still kind of going through some of this myself, and frankly, going through all these ClinVar variants was extremely tedious until I kind of whole section that was put behind a paywall. But being able to do that and being able to look up different risk conditions I have and see things like, okay, my family has a risk for Parkinson's. I can look up that condition and then straight away I can see, okay, here are the genes that have certain risks. Here are the reasons they have risks. For example, you can't metabolize a certain type of vitamin B. One is folate for me. I have trouble metabolizing it, I found in my research. This is where supplementation next level at genetics comes into play. And it's not just taking pills at random. It's saying, okay, here's what the issue is with my genetics. So rather than taking folate, I take something called methylfolate, or they sometimes call it enhanced folate or something like that. And it's a little more expensive, but wow, clears up my head, gives me a little more energy. I'm like, I've been missing something. And I think what I kind of imagine for Tom's Office of Health Innovation is that we would be able to have something maybe with the marketplace, but be able to work with these companies and have some kind of private public partnerships to be able to have these tools at the ability of people to be able to use on their own to find information and make it a lot easier to kind of collate and grab that information and have that presented. Of course, not everybody's going to dive into this like I do, but also for the doctor to be involved. Like it's astounding to me that, for example, one of the anti-rejection drugs I'm on, tacrolimus, I found out I've got a issue with my CYP3A4 gene, which is another one you may hear a lot of if you're in the longevity circle. So I have trouble like clearing it as much. So they were putting me on the same amount of levels that someone that doesn't have this genetic variant would. Now, I was telling them, look, I have this genetic variant. And they said, look, we know genetics are the future, but we just got to follow standard protocol. So there were weeks where I was way above level and they were only reducing it a little bit at a time. And it was affecting my nerves a little bit. And my head was kind of twitching this whole time until their protocol finally got down to where I knew it should be because I looked at my genetics. So in my idea of Tom's Office of Health Innovation would be that this is something that would be given some directives from the National Health Institute and be able to say, hey, look, we need to start looking. If people can get a genetic test, let's pay for that first. Let's do some preventive care so we don't have to have choose. Let's grab them an Oura ring. Let's say, okay, wow, it looks like their heart rate variability just tanked. Something's going on there. Maybe we can have some kind of an intervention. I think one of the things about transhumanism and health and life extension is that so much of it is dependent on the individual. Been doing some just practices on my own and realizing, wow, I'm getting, huge benefits here. And it's really important that we deal with this as a group and as a society. When we've got, like Bill Andrews was saying, we need a team. We got multiple people working on this. We had Tom saying, look, I've got similar issues we've got to work on in parallel. All of these things are important, and that's kind of the point of the party. But longevity, when it comes down to it, a lot of it is, as of right now, the vast majority, I'd say, is within the person's control. It's going to be something they need to be able to do to be able to move that marker towards longevity escape velocity. It's not going to be something that someone can hand them, or there's often a criticism, well, why don't we have, longevity technology for everybody and we'll pass it out like a pill? But a lot of it takes a little bit more work than that. And hopefully we can get to the point where we can get doctors really involved with patients' health and looking at this next level medicine and actually use these innovative techniques, partner these public and private institutions that have a lot to share with each other, and be able to help everybody live longer and then get to the point where we can, be smarter and be happier too. So that's my spiel.
Yes, thank you very much, Zach, for that quite informative overview. And I completely agree that personalized healthcare is the future, and one cannot achieve ideal results with a one-size-fits-all approach. The tracking of one's vital health statistics is absolutely essential, and I myself have been engaged in it to a greater extent in the past year especially. So I have two watches, a Fitbit Sense 2 and a Garmin Fenix 5X, and they provide me with a lot of the same data that you presented, Zach, with regard to heart rate variability. I also get blood oxygen concentration, breathing rate, and various metrics related to my exercise performance, since I use them to track each of my runs. And I also use them as ways to cross-reference one another to make sure that a particular result that I get is not just an artifact from one device that wouldn't be replicated by the other device. But of course, you are going a lot further in this, Zach, in that you have gotten your genome sequenced and you've gotten some fairly detailed interpretations of particular genes and what they mean in your situation. So hopefully that will become increasingly accurate over time. Now, we have a bit of audience feedback that I would like to highlight. First of all, John Carrots writes that we have to not only live long, but make it a better world where you want to live for a long time. And certainly the Transhumanist Party is focused on that. That is why we have such a broad variety of topics that we cover in our virtual enlightenment salons. We see length of life and quality of life as being interrelated, and every field of human endeavor needs to be advanced in order to achieve this kind of vision. Dr. Edward Hudgens states that he has been working on some policy approaches. He states that reforms will need to offer open-ended experimentation with institutions, a la Friedrich A. Hayek's understanding of institutional evolution. And he writes that he has a sick care to healthcare working group of policy experts in DC on how to radically reform Medicare, Social Security, and other systems, essentially to anticipate the kinds of changes that Tom was discussing. So these conversations are happening, and our virtual enlightenment salons are a great venue to bring various threads of these conversations together. Now, we also have comments from Vladimir Shakirov, who writes that Tom Ross is right, that we should prepare good answers to the questions which would arise. He also writes that, but more than 100,000 people die now, he means every day, and this is the most important issue. He believes that other issues will solve when more people work on that, and many would, but the basic answers need to be prepared now. So I think one of the ways in which we can address all of this, including indeed the very urgent problem of aging and death and the toll that those phenomena take, is to bring more people into the movement. And we bring in people with a variety of skill sets, with a variety of areas of expertise, to essentially take part in the transhumanist sphere within our realm of discourse, and to offer their ideas, to engage these various facets of what are indeed complex and sometimes challenging issues. And the more people we attract to the movement, obviously we want people who are thoughtful contributors, the more likely it is that we will succeed in addressing all of these problems and concerns in parallel and bringing about the greatest length and quality of life that we possibly can. So thank you very much to Zach for your presentation. And now I would like to move on to Jason Geringer. I would ask Jason to provide his remarks on why longevity is important to him and how he first came upon this subject and what interested him about it. So, Jason, please go ahead.
Yeah, I'm probably pretty similar to in Tom's camp as far as, I came to transhumanism from researching in AI. And honestly, I didn't even, until I joined the party, I didn't even know longevity was a thing, really, But, when I found out, I figured that's a no-brainer, right? And, and he's got a really good point, and everybody has been kind of hitting on this, but we do need to walk and chew gum at the same time. We need to follow all three of our main transhumanist party paths of super longevity and super intelligence and super happiness. And there's a comment in the chat there about this problem with overpopulation. Okay. And now I remember when I was still in high school and I'm thinking, okay, how old am I going to be in the year 2000? Right. And I'm looking at what the population is, population growth. Right. And I'm plotting this out, and the way the math is working out, holy crap, by the time I'm like 60 or something, the world's going to be crazy overpopulated. And I know that whenever people start starving, you get war, you know what I mean? And so I was like, oh, this is going to be bad. And, the math looked all the charts, and, I was sure of this. But by the time today, we look at the demographic situation, and in a lot of countries, the demographics are collapsing. There's not enough young people and too many old people. So what that taught me was that we need to be really careful of our assumptions, because it may look like this is going to happen, but we don't necessarily know for sure until, it happens. And so, we don't know what longevity will do. There's this idea of the longevity dividend. Okay, there's like geopolitical, scientists and stuff looking at China's demographics and thinking that they are going to be in a world of hurt because they will have way too many old people, not enough young people, not enough people, in the workforce to pay for these old people. But, if we have longevity, them old people ain't going to be old people. That's what we have to realize. We keep thinking, oh, we're going to have, that's not the way it's going to be. And we'll have young people in the workforce sustaining the economy. This might, save countries like China's bacon, or in a way. And the super intelligence. There's all kinds of problems that we need to address here and now, but we also don't know what it's going to be like when we get AGI, when we get super intelligence. It's going to help us to answer these questions, so we want to be kind of careful about our assumptions again, because we don't know for sure how it's going to be. And I'm similar to Tom about, I'm not so sure I wanted to live forever. You know what I mean? But I also realized that part of that is because, man, I'm getting old and it hurts. You know what I mean? But if I was younger and it didn't hurt all the time, well, maybe I would. So, there's that. There's the super happiness aspect. If we had that, there'd be less suicide, people might want to live longer, so there we go. We need to walk and chew gum and maybe even juggle at the same time too. And that can be my opening statement.
Yes, indeed. We do need to pursue all of these paths simultaneously. Thank you, Jason, for your comments. And Daniel, you wanted to respond to Zach.
Yeah, I think you can't underestimate the value of something called gamification, especially with respect to community science. And I'm thinking of at one point, Oklahoma City earned the title of the most obese city in the country, and their mayor actually challenged the entire city to 1 million pounds of weight loss. And they were also the king of like fast food, so there was a correlation between like fast food density and obesity, and it was
Who would have thought?
pretty much yeah, right. But I think this is a great way to spread longevity awareness, is get people to track their health outcomes and even do a block by block kind of leaderboard challenge. It's like one block of a city is challenging the other block to, maybe not weight loss necessarily, but, sleep fitness. Or there's even a very simple test for soil microbial health. You can bury a pair of cotton underwear and dig it up 60 days later. And if you have microbes in your soil, guess what? The only thing left will be the elastic band at the top, is the microbes. So what if we could correlate things like internal microbe health with external soil health? I mean, that would be a very fascinating kind of ecological awareness, citizen science kind of project. But people won't do things unless they're fun. That's something I learned when I got certified as a personal trainer.
Well,
but the
part
people
of that
didn't
is
want
getting these
to
rings into the hands of people. Because when we say, have a whole block do it, this puppy cost me $300. That's
right.
That was
Maybe
a chunk of change.
we might be able to do something. I just ordered like 100 urine strip tests off Amazon for $25, and like 14 cents each, and they are 25 cents each. And you can test 14 different things.
An next door neighbor that had that same interest. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, but I mean, that's a pretty good deal to self-check 14 different, urine panels with a little 25-cent strip. And that's you could test things like, insulin and all the different health outcomes or health factors. And that's not going to cost $300, and that's something on the order of, low-cost citizen science is cool.
Yes.
And that's why I encourage people to get their amateur radio licenses too, because I kind of see that community as being a great curator and archiver and encourager of community and citizen science. By the way, they changed the name. Some people changed the name from citizen science to community science because you don't have to be a citizen to do it. They don't want to scare away people from doing community science if they don't have their paperwork, in order. But anyway, that was the big point I wanted to make. But yes,
well, check it out. So one of the things about the whole benefit of these groups is not just the device itself and the tracking, but it's the platform they provide. That's where a lot of the value comes from. It's being able to interpret and collate that data rather than just get the data. If it came out all in some comma-spaced value file, nobody would ever look at it. It's being able to look at it, interpret it. One of the cool things is, like, even Fitbit started this. Our mutual friend, many people here, Mike DeVerde, he was saying to me one day, "Man, you're really beating me on steps." And I'm like, "Oh, dang, have you been watching me here? I don't remember that." So, but then after that, I noticed that, and we started looking at each other's steps a little bit. And that's something that Fitbit does. And you can do that in your group. And obviously it's not public. You add the person as a friend, and then you'd be able to do that. But and I think
one other thing occurred to me is,
yeah, go ahead.
Oh, this is something that the X Prize people found out, that Peter Diamandis, the X Prize Foundation, is when you put up prize money for a challenge, you get like 10 times the activity than if you just bought it on the free market. So that's another thing that can be leveraged, is having kind of monetary rewards for some of these outcomes. Yeah. Go ahead. I didn't mean to make you forget what you were saying.
No, you didn't. This is a back and forth. I appreciate that. But yeah, you could almost like maybe crowdsource some kind of an award or something. I know there's a lot of ideas. I haven't seen them entirely, of things like it'll be a WeFunder kind of thing where, like, you agree to pledge so much, but like only if they actually get started. It'd be kind of cool if you had like a group challenge like that. Like people would say, yeah, we'll contribute so much to a prize fund to be split among the winners, but they actually have to succeed first. They have to get to a certain point, and if they hit that point, then we'll make that prize go out.
There's actually a name for that.
Thing.
Yeah, there's in the digital space, there's a thing called a Ulysses contract. Because if you remember the story where Ulysses tied himself to the mast so he wouldn't be tempted by the sirens. So you can actually use digital tools like tokens or proof of activity tokens to do a challenge with yourself. And it's an automatic contract where if you don't meet the challenge, say $100 gets donated to your least favorite charity or something like that.
There was that's I think some of the patent for some of the stuff like that was there was a patent for like getting wearables and getting some incentive of like small amounts of Bitcoin being sent to you. And the patent was like 66.6 or something. And it was held by Microsoft. And it put out there was this huge, Alex Jones level controversy about, they're just going to put a microchip in it. And it's like, no, I don't need a microchip. I've got a ring right here, Alex. I'm going to wear this instead. And
I think that was a patent where Microsoft wanted to use people's thought processes to mint Bitcoin. And it was like 666 in the patent number. So that's proof of thought work or something. I'll have to look that up.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
I will note that work is underway for an age reversal X Prize. So there was an announcement last year, and I have linked to it here, that the next X Prize competition will award $100 million for innovations that can reverse aging and increase longevity. Innovations will be sought in 4 categories: the immune system, skin, cognition, and muscle health. So there has been work done by Peter Diamandis and the X Prize Foundation on establishing a prize with an immense monetary amount as an incentive for more research innovations in that field. So thank you for the spirited discussion, Zach and Daniel. And now I would like to go to Art Ramon Garcia for his perspective on longevity.
Yeah, when I first came into the transhumanist movement around 2013 or 2014, I was more interested, say, in kind of the technological integration, kind of the typical cyborg, Borg type technology. That was my fascination. Longevity, not so much, but as I started hearing more about longevity, well, it doesn't make sense to grow into an old cyborg and have your, biological parts wear down, and eventually you're just left with half your cyborg parts. So it definitely longevity grew on me as an idea. At first, it did seem to me a little, what's the term? A little selfish, little narcissistic to want to beat death. But now it's grown on me. It's like, hey, I've always wanted to do arts, didn't get into the art field like I should have, and longevity will allow me to do that. It will allow me to retire from my current career and then continue on with the art career I should have started long ago. And so that's like my current motivation right now, as my personal motivation. As far as humanity as a whole, yes, I want to see humanity, expand out to the stars. I mean, there's plenty of space out there. We don't have to worry about the limited resources of this planet. There's plenty of space out there, and I want to see humanity just go out into the galaxy. But personally, I want to have this second career as art, and that's one of my purposes, of existing. That's what fulfills me and makes me happy. And I'm always trying to improve my skills. And I had a bit of a setback because of COVID, and that has set back my body. I dealing with long COVID set back a lot of my my artistic endeavor I was doing. I was doing a lot of shows. I was completing paintings within 3 months, 6 months. Now it's taking me 3 years, and I'm still working on the same paintings. Luckily, recently I've done some alternative therapies that have helped. I started doing hyperbaric oxygen therapy. That's been helping. It's been giving me a lot more energy. It's beating back that chronic fatigue. Started doing temperature contrast therapy, when you kind of go back and forth between a hot sauna and a cold plunge. That has helped me get rid of some of the brain fog. So some things are helping, but there's still another issue that I found out, and I got one of these wearable devices, and this is the Wellu O2 ring. So this monitors basically heartbeats, oxygen levels, and movement. So I got this, and I discovered that I'm going severely below oxygen levels. I mean, it's supposed to be like 88% and above. I'm frequently going below 88%. And it seems to coincide with my heartbeat. If I am in a relaxed state for too long, say sitting at my desk all day, as my heart rate starts to get below 70 and towards 60, well, so does my oxygen levels start to drop below 88%. I was like, wow, I wonder if this is contributing to all that brain fog. Maybe I do have some sort of lung damage, and I'm not able to get enough oxygen through my lungs unless my heart rate is pumping fast enough through there. So that's one issue, but I'm also having a problem where if I'm doing what I would consider mild physical activity, my heart is not keeping up. It's like my heart rate should be around 130 for the hike I'm doing, but my heart rate is in the 80s and 90s. And then I start to huff and puff and tire. And then when I take a break, my heart rate quickly rises to 144. Well, it's like, that's where my heart rate should be, but it's not keeping up with my activity level. And I've gone to my doctor. My doctor just kind of does not know what to do. I've been having to do my own investigation, getting tools like this to try and figure out the root cause of the issue I'm having. And, they've done blood works. My blood work looks fine. I've been to the cardiologist, wore that monitor for 30 days. Nothing came up wrong with that monitor. And on my follow-up, speaking with my cardiologist, she almost giggled at the fact that I told her that, I can't exercise like I used to. I'm power walking with people who are, a decade or two older than I am, and I can't keep up with them. I'm out of breath. And she almost thought it was funny. I don't know. Maybe she deals with people who are on the edge of death, and this isn't serious to her. But so yeah, I've got like a pulmonologist appointment in February. It's taking forever to get that, to try and further diagnose the root cause. Because I've heard there could be possibly two issues with oxygen levels. One is your actual lungs being damaged and being able to absorb oxygen. And the second is the mechanism that actually transfers that oxygen to your muscles. That, whatever mechanism that is, could be damaged. So yeah, I'm having issues. But I'm still pushing myself. I don't want to just lay down and take it. I went on a hike this Friday. And that's the longest, most grueling hike I've done since maybe towards the end of 2020, when the COVID started to really hit me hard. Started at the beginning of 2020, and towards the end of 2020, I almost had to quit hiking. I could not hike anymore. And this was a 10-mile hike on a trail, here they call it the Phone Line Trail, 10-mile hike that's out and back combined, and with about 1,300 feet of elevation gain. I had never done this trail before entirely because I always considered it too easy. Before, it was too easy a trail for me. Now, I struggled to do that trail. And I got towards the very end where it's supposed to do some switchbacks and go down to a road at the bottom of the canyon that I power walk frequently. I got lost towards the end of that trail. I lost the trail, and I came down into this almost like a notch. I dropped down. It was rocky, thinking that beyond that, the trail would continue. I couldn't find it. I just saw a deadly drop off everywhere. I was like, oh shit. And I started to panic a little bit. And I kind of climbed up a shelf to try and get out of there. I didn't remember how it came down. I climbed up a shelf, halfway panicking. I just strained my quads. Nope, that shelf didn't go anywhere. Climbed down. Went another shelf. Nope, just rock wall. That's all I saw. So I came down. I looked at my device, my all trails or backcountry, and I was like, where am I? Where am I off the trail? And I just had to calm down. And I looked at another shelf. I scrambled up it. And like I said, my quads are done. I mean, but they're strained. I strained my quads looking at the other shelves. And they're barely working. And I managed to get up on the shelf. And yes, there's the trail where I came down through. So I continue my walk back to along the trail that I came from. And that's 5 miles. And my quads are just completely done. The previous day I was doing a workout where I was doing a lot of, calf raises and box step ups. And here my legs are shaky. And this trail, almost the entire trail is steep drop off. If I just stumble and fall over that, I'm dead pretty much. I'm just going to tumble, hit a rock and die. And it varies anywhere from like maybe 6 feet to 1 foot, the trail. So I have to focus. Don't die. Don't die. Concentrate. No matter how squirrely my ankles are, I could barely control them at times. I got my hiking pose, focus. Don't die, because that's death just a foot away. So it's a real mental arduous task that you have to do to not die. And but this is how I push myself, because I want to get past this COVID long haul, and trying to figure out what it is. My heart is not working correctly, but I'm not going to stop. I'm going to keep pushing the body and trying to force it to heal itself. And hopefully with the medical help in the future, if I can get the right doctor to figure out exactly what is wrong, and maybe there's a treatment for it, maybe there isn't. Hopefully, maybe in a decade, there are advancements in medicine, will catch up. But yeah, longevity. I was facing death that night. I was tired. It took me 6 hours to complete the entire hike. I was dead tired. It took me 3 liters of water. I drank 3 liters of water the entire time. And towards the end, I was out of water, and I still had like half a mile to get to the parking lot. And I get to the parking lot, and I'm the only vehicle in the parking lot. So yeah, it was pretty scary.
That is an epic story. That is an epic story.
Yeah, it was pretty scary because you really are just a foot away from death. And even though it's considered an easy trail, you're right next to a drop off. So yeah, and purpose. That's one thing I think that people should have is have a purpose. Have a hobby. Whether it's art, whether it's hiking, whether it's running a 5K. And I think in the future, the government, when it's forced to give people, UBI, because they're going to be forced to do it because, they're reactive. And maybe eventually everyone's going to get a nice basic living UBI, and there'll be performance UBIs for competitive events that you enter, whether it's a drawing contest or a 5K or a triathlon. You'll get a little stipend UBI for participating, in competitive events, no matter what they are, dancing, music. So I'm hoping that, when the robots do take our jobs, that humans will still be able to be competitive amongst themselves. Who cares if a robot can outrace you on a 5K? It's a robot. Of course it's going to win. but you're the human competing with another human, and people are driven by competition. So hopefully in the future, when the government is forced to give out UBI, that can be sort of gamified, partly. So yeah, that's all I got.
Yes, thank you for sharing your story, Art Ramon. And it does have an important moral, which is don't die. Actually, when I was at Longevity Summit Dublin, there was a speaker, Dr. Rob Conrad Maciejewski, who is the co-founder and CEO of Biolytica, a company based in Switzerland. And one of his first slides when he was describing essentially the desired approach toward longevity was don't die. And I think people need a reminder of that, especially because there are so many different perils that can affect human beings, from the kind of hiking accident that you thankfully avoided to automobile accidents to wars or criminal acts to natural disasters like the about 100 people who died in the Maui wildfires recently, quite unfortunately. And these are all problems. Aging is the leading cause of death, but there are so many ways in which we could succumb to death, and overcoming all of them, avoiding all of them, should be a part of everybody's longevity strategy. Also, I think you made an essential point that living longer will allow people to really explore their creative abilities to a much greater extent. And many people, because their first career or their main career occupies such a vast fraction of their lifespans, they don't have the time to fully explore their creative side or their artistic side. But over time, if people live dramatically longer, they can come to have multiple careers, and their second or third career can be more focused on their unique individual contributions rather than the need to make as much money as possible. And actually, this could also be a solution to the concern that Bill raised about young people having a difficult time finding jobs, because if it becomes a cultural norm for people to switch careers every so often, say every 25 years, one would go on a 5 or 10 year break, and that would be the new retirement. And then one would come back and start a new career instead of resuming the previous career. Then people's second or third or fourth careers could be, number one, more fulfilling to them, and number two, could be in fields where they are just as new as a young person who is starting that as their first career. And therefore, that would kind of even the playing field a bit with regard to young people's prospects versus the prospects of rejuvenated older people. So now I also wanted to emphasize a comment that Daniel made in our chat, that he's glad that an ethic of lifelong learning is catching on more and more. And I agree, during my lifetime, that has become a much more widely accepted notion. It's no longer fringe to talk about education not stopping at college. And then Daniel also writes, the USTP could be the don't die party. Yes, we oppose death in all of its manifestations, and we want to lower the incidence of death in all ways possible. So now I would like to ask Ben Ballweg, who is, after all, our Director of Longevity Outreach, to comment on why longevity is important to him. And the reason why I asked you to go last, Ben, is so that you could hear all of the input that everybody else provided and consider perhaps how might it affect our longevity outreach strategy. What messaging do you think could be particularly effective in terms of getting more people to understand and appreciate the value of pursuing life extension?
Thanks, Gennady. Thanks for everybody and your perspectives today. I do think that there is a lot of skepticism of if we did have longer lives, there's skepticism of, well, then I just got to work longer for those people that own everything. And so I do kind of come at this from a, if things were more equal and it didn't feel so unequal, that there might be a little more motivation to have everybody's lives extended longer. I mean, there is the movie In Time with Justin Timberlake, and the very rich do very well in that movie, and everybody lives to 26, but then everybody has to keep working and working so that the rich can get richer. We did have a guest a couple of years ago, John K. Davis, that I think that his case for ethics of life extension is quite compelling. He had the two caveats of not being more unequal, to nip that in the bud. And then in his book, I think he had more of the overpopulation concern, but I think he softened that concern to not laying waste to the planet that we have with more people or people that are around longer. So I thought that his was a pretty good measured response to here's how we justify extending lives. I think combating aging, it does make everybody's lives progressively more challenging. I can't necessarily say worse because you get to have the benefit of all the life you've lived so far. But man, when it starts to get harder to walk and these activities of daily living that age at this point inevitably brings on for people, it's hard. We want to not have people need to deal with that and to have to look forward to that throughout their lives. How I was thinking I would start, what I was going to share was, I remember lying in my bed one evening and when I was like a teenager and thinking, man, what this nut of my mortality, like how do we get past this? And I just, until late 20s, I was like, well, this is just inevitable. Like, unless religion is it, unless there's an afterlife, this is just what we face. But I had about a year to go in the military and was like, don't we have science that can maybe try to figure some of this out? And I guess I feel like in the years since, I'm like, it's at least worth continuing to strive for. It's not a sure bet, but it's also not sure that it's not going to work. So it's worth continuing to pursue. I will say that next weekend, I'm going to tour the Cryonics Institute in suburbs of Detroit, and I am curious about that possibility. It's kind of nice to have that as a possible alternative backup. I know we have different wagers, like there was Pascal's original wager. Gennady has his own wager. This is kind of like the cryonics wager. So I think that what science can do, even if we can't by the end of my life manage to keep extending it indefinitely, to have that option is kind of neat. I'm not sure if I'm committed to it yet, but I'm going to check it out and see what there is to it. So I suppose I'm fine with that. That was a little bit of this and that, but I appreciate the chance to share my perspective on why longevity is motivating to me today.
Yes, indeed. And thank you, Ben, for that thoughtful perspective. So I will comment on Stolyarov's wager, which I formulated in 2007, which is the following. If you believe in human life extension and are right, you have everything to win. A happy, prosperous, indefinite life that you can be sure of in this world. If you believe in human life extension and are wrong, you cease to exist. If you do not believe in human life extension and are right, you cease to exist. If you do not believe in human life extension and are wrong, it may be that the effort that you did not put into promoting the idea was just enough for the possibility not to come to pass, and then you will cease to exist. So the rational option among those four is to support human life extension, because if you're wrong and it doesn't happen in your lifetime, then essentially the same consequence would happen to you if you didn't believe in supporting human life extension, but you were right. So you really don't have anything to lose, in my view, by supporting the longevity cause. Now, also, you mentioned that you will be touring the Cryonics Institute. This is the first time that I'm going to publicly announce this, but I have become a lifetime member of the Cryonics Institute. And membership is not the same as making a cryopreservation arrangement as such, but it does allow one to pursue a cryopreservation contract at a significant discount. And it also essentially allows one to be involved with the organization's governance and other activities. And the reason why I chose to become a lifetime member of the Cryonics Institute, first of all, it was kind of my 36th birthday present to myself, but also I wanted to advance the cryonics project because this money is being used to maintain existing patients as well as perform research into superior cryopreservation techniques and outreach and advocacy for cryonics. And obviously, in order for cryonics to work, it essentially has to be an institutional effort that spans multiple generations for the people who are already cryopreserved to be successfully revived in the future. We need people in each subsequent generation to care about them until aging is reversed. But even when aging is reversed, I think it will take a few more decades for reliable means of, say, undoing the damage from the cryopreservation process, as well as repairing whatever ailments brought about the legal death of those individuals to arise. So it's important, I think, for people to, one, be aware of cryonics, and two, to explore this as plan B, essentially, because as we pointed out, accidents can happen, and other causes besides aging could lead one's life to be shortened, unfortunately. And in that event, I think it is very useful to have a backup option. So this is the first time I've spoken about it publicly at this salon, but I will have more to say about it in the coming weeks. So thank you to Ben. And now we have about 15 minutes left in our virtual enlightenment salon. And there is an interesting question that is posed by our friend Danila Immortalist from Open Longevity. He wonders, when scientists create aging therapies, will it be sold by commercial companies or will it be available for free through the state? And if it will be free, as the realization of the right to life, will it only be for American citizens or for immigrants as well? So I have my own thoughts on this, but I wanted to hear the other panelists' responses to this question, at least in terms of what you think the future will hold. And Bill, since you have been working on anti-aging therapies, I think it would be fitting to ask for your thoughts first.
Well, if I could fund the research without relying on anybody else, I would be dropping it from airplanes and making it available free to everybody. But unfortunately, it's going to depend on what the person who funds the research is going to want to do with it. So who funds it, where it gets, the funders I've had in the past had their own ideas. Future funders are going to have their own ideas. So I probably won't have any control over it. But I'm still trying to focus on the first thing I said. I want to be able to fund it myself, and then make it available to everybody.
Yes,
yeah,
indeed.
And one way he's doing that is appealing to the vanity of young women with this One Truth 818 product right here. The cosmetics market is huge, so I think this is just a brilliant move on his part. But it's telomerase activator. Get it, spritz yourself, and look all young and beautiful with it. So, but people bring that up, and
that provides only a fraction of the funding that's needed. And if
Of
I could
course,
find
yeah,
go-to-market
certainly.
partners like them, I could probably get that going. But that doesn't provide anywhere near the amount of funding.
Yeah, it's right. But I think of part of this being with, I think the analogy I use a lot that I haven't really heard a very good comeback to is cell phones. I think if we were to have cell phone technology and to have said to everybody, well, will it only be available for the rich, or should everybody be able to have it? Maybe it should, it be distributed for everybody to have. I think we didn't need to do that. I remember when I was younger watching, X-Files and seeing Fox Mulder with his big clunky cell phone and thinking, wow, that's like so high tech. He's a, government operative and he can talk to people while he's in the middle of the forest. And now, I've got multiple friends in Nigeria and Taiwan that, have the very cheapest phone and they're distributed everywhere. And yeah, you have Gordon Gekko in Wall Street with his cute little looking TV that he had at the time that he was so proud of. But now we've got big screen TVs. So I think the rich are going to get it first. And I think that's a good thing because they're going to spend a lot of money for it. And that money is going to be put back into R&D.
Yes, indeed. And of course, the first therapies that are administered are always experimental, and the people receiving them are taking on considerable risk, even with the best of precautions. But we learn from that, and the rest of us will be able to access, hopefully, the next generations of improved and less expensive therapies. That's how technological progress is supposed to work in the absence of significant barriers to innovation.
If I may.
Yes.
With Brian Johnson, with his, what is it, like $3 million a year or something like that plan that he has right now. I've had a few people ask me about that. And I was like, though, you bring that down like a tenth of the price for whatever regimen that would be. And then you're going to get 99% of what he's getting. And you bring it down another 10%, you're going to be getting like 95% of what he's getting. So that kind of proliferation, like he's trailblazing like all that we can do for ourselves with healthcare. But you can find out a lot of things that can be done through him doing that are within many more people's price ranges. So.
Yes, indeed. And Brian Johnson has published
like
on
open
his...
sourcing a lot of the research. He's providing all of the research for everything he's done for free. Like a lot of that 3 million goes to like MRI machines and diagnostics and stuff for getting baseline readings on all of himself. Now, you don't need to get an MRI every day or whatever to be able to get the benefits of knowing some of this stuff. You can start off small with an Oura ring, although they are still kind of expensive. But he's making that research public. So even then, even though he's spending all that money is like the majority of the benefits of that are directly going to the public with him saying, here's all the results of all these tests that I'm spending all this money on. Look and see what I got. It's open to you guys.
Right. And Brian Johnson's blueprint has been published. I have linked to the website here. And he states that essentially 80% of his protocol is accessible to people of ordinary means. Essentially, the food and the supplements could be purchased by people with middle-class incomes. And he really emphasizes the sleep regimen as well, which is an aspect that many of us need to work on, including in the longevity community. But if there are, let's say, easily realizable aspects of his plan, he's very open about them, and he's very focused on encouraging people to adopt those healthy habits. I actually had a chance to interact with him at Longevity Summit Dublin. He was one of the featured speakers, and he presented remotely because as part of his sleep regimen, he doesn't want to cross more than 2 time zones in either direction. But his speech was quite inspiring, and he openly spoke about defeating death, which was remarkable for me to hear that from a high net worth individual of his prominence. So I asked him essentially, what would it take in order for more people of his stature to essentially embrace defeating death as an explicit priority? And he actually had to stop and think about that question for a minute because it's not an easy answer. The answer that I recall from him was along the lines of perhaps it is the struggle for longevity and kind of working our way up from being the underdogs that will attract more momentum to the movement and essentially lead it to catch on. So we shall see if this materializes. Of course, Brian Johnson has gotten a lot of media coverage. Unfortunately, not all of it has been favorable, but perhaps even the unfavorable media coverage has placed him into the spotlight so that he is now the subject of conversation, and more people know about him. More people can learn about his blueprint and perhaps try to emulate aspects of it. So any further thoughts on Danila's question with regard to how these longevity treatments would be made available once developed? Let's hear from Jason if you have ideas.
Well, that is a tough one because like Bill was saying, it kind of depends on where the money comes from originally. But, if we think about it, what is the ethical thing? What is the moral thing to do? And I think we can probably all agree that it wouldn't be cool if only a slight fraction of the billionaires, have access to it. I mean, so I'm sure we can pretty much agree on that. Whether or not we'll be able to, fund it through the state, I don't know. It depends on if it gets cheap enough, I guess, right? I know the guy in the chat here had some pretty good points that, there's other things like other countries have universal health care and they're able to do it. So I think we'll be able to do it. I really don't think that it'll be a situation where only the super, super rich have access to it. But never know. One other thing I could add is that, when we're talking about these problems that are going to arise in the future, and that, we're not sure what it's going to be, and that AGI is going to be able to provide answers and solutions. Also, the part of this longevity dividend is going to be human brain power. I mean, think about it. All of our most brilliant minds will still be around. I mean, think about if Nikola Tesla was still around inventing stuff every single day. I mean, what if Leonardo da Vinci was still around doing stuff? Stephen Hawking, so that's going to, have an effect, I think. So, that makes me super optimistic that it's going to be all right.
Yes,
that's
indeed. It. And having those brilliant minds around longer can truly transform our civilization. Indeed, as I often say, every time a person dies, an entire universe is extinguished. And when that person is of a degree of talent that is capable of really solving some major problems or making some significant discoveries, that is a tremendous loss to the entire species. And if we can avert those kinds of losses, our society would be so much better off and our rate of progress would be so much faster. Now, in the chat, our friend Sergio Terrero writes that life is so precious that there's no way that public health systems will not handle it. And that's also an argument that Aubrey de Grey has made, that once realistic age reversal treatments become available, essentially it would become folly for public health systems not to embrace them, because the vast majority of healthcare costs incurred by those very systems are for essentially fighting a losing battle at the end of life when patients have multiple comorbidities. And yes, it's possible to extend their lives by a few months using current, quite expensive techniques. But if it were instead possible to rejuvenate them, then they would develop many fewer such comorbid conditions in the first place. And we have about 5 minutes remaining in our salon. So I wanted to get Daniel's thoughts on this question of how the treatments for aging would be made available.
Yeah, I recently recommended something called the Heilmeyer Catechism, which you can Google. It's 8 simple questions, really, but I would think everything the U.S. Transhumanist Party does should subject itself to this DARPA director named George Heilmeyer, who came up with these questions as a way of evaluating proposals. And if you can answer all these questions, usually your proposal will pass muster. You are articulated with no jargon. What are you trying to do? You look at how it's done today. What are the limits of current practice? You say what's new in your approach and why you think it'll succeed. You ask who cares. If you're successful, what difference will it make? You ask what are the risks? You ask the cost. You ask how long it will take. And the last question is, how do you check for midterm and final exams to check for success? And actually, David Wood was, I mentioned this to him, and he's like, wow, I'm going to look that up. So I think everything the USTP in their platform should answer those eight or so questions, and we would benefit from another area of government intervention. But I love the idea of people pursuing value in their own way, in a voluntary, coercion-free way. So that's always going to be my preference for how to get things done as well.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Daniel. And it is true that a voluntary approach offers more flexibility, more room for innovation, and more customization as well, because one size does not fit all, as we have seen quite clearly in medicine and healthcare, and as Zach has illustrated via his very interesting presentation. And now let's hear from Art Ramon Garcia, if you can speak for about a minute as to this question of how longevity treatments might be made available.
Well, if it's in regards to the immigrants, I usually think an immigrant's going to have a lot more pressing needs than age extension or longevity treatment. You know, they need housing, some form of employment. So I think it's going to be a last priority for an immigrant. But as for the overall populace, if the government sees that there's benefit to have anti-aging therapies for the population, and therefore avoid a lot of the ailments that you have with age, I think it's a win-win for the government to somehow help subsidize it. I mean, right now we don't even have treatment for dentistry. I mean, you got to have money for dental work. They do have for lower income, they do have some volunteer dental people who help the poor, but for the most part, you can get only very basic dental treatment. So I would say that longevity is going to be really far back of the list for people who don't have the means or immigrants without means.
Well, not all immigrants lack means, though. There is quite a bit of high-skilled immigration, people pursuing various job opportunities, as well as people fleeing from conflict zones. So, for example, as a result of this war in Ukraine, there has been substantial skilled emigration from both Ukraine and Russia. From Ukraine because people's lives were destroyed, but they may still have money and they are quite capable of working in other countries. And emigration from Russia is primarily from a group of people who are opposed to the war, who really don't see the point of this fighting and who would rather work and exchange value peacefully. So those are some examples. My view is longevity needs to be an international endeavor. And because of collaborations among scientists throughout the world, there should be a focus on making treatments as broadly available as possible, so that if a therapy is developed in one country, it is fast-tracked in other countries as well and made available to their citizens as quickly as possible. So thank you to everybody for taking part in this quite vital virtual enlightenment salon. I think we achieved our objective of discussing our various perspectives on longevity in a thoughtful and nuanced way, and I hope our audience agrees, and I hope that we all live long and prosper.